When I was building my agency, I would make 150 cold calls a day, and I did this for around 6 months. And to save you from having to do all that dialing, I'm going to compose to you the 7 main lessons, the 7 no BS advice that I can give you after making those 15 plus thousand cold calls so that you can go out there, not have to do as many cold calls as I have, and still be able to book 2 to 10 meetings every single day from you cold calling. Now, the first tip I'll give you, the first piece of advice, is that the list actually does matter. Whenever I would compile my leads in the cold calling list, I'd make sure I had 3 key pieces of information. One, the context of me reaching out. Now, sometimes this took a bit longer, but as long as I knew why I was reaching out to them, I was able to have my opener, which I'll show you later, be a lot more effective because I could come in having researched already who this person is. So most importantly, I'd have their first name. Secondly, I'd give myself some context as to why I reached out to them. So maybe they don't have a website, so therefore that's why I was reaching out to them. They don't have a website. Maybe they were running Facebook ads already and I wanted to help them optimize their Facebook ads. Maybe they didn't run any Facebook ads and therefore that was the reason I was reaching out to them. Regardless, I had a context. And thirdly, and this one might seem a bit weird, it might seem a bit bizarre, but I'd always try and understand how long they'd been in business in. And the reason I would do that is because I understood that people reacted differently to my message. And I only understood this, by the way, from literally doing hundreds and hundreds of cold calls with I basically collected data and I figured out that this specific type of dentist, because I was working in the dental niche, this specific type of dentist would be prone to me, well, he'd be prone to being annoyed, basically. It's a certain word that I used. And when I looked at how long the practices had been open and how long the person was the owner in them, it'd always be 5+ years. So in some of the practices, some of the businesses that were more recent, it would always be easier for me to use specific words and they would be resonating with them than if someone had been in business longer. So 3 pieces of information I'd always go for, and this is something I want you to do. Get their first name. If you can't find their first name when you cold call them, literally just say, hey, am I reaching the owner of? Yes, it is. Awesome. Sorry, and then ask them their name, right? Sorry, I didn't catch your name. I couldn't find it. I'm really sorry about that. And then give you their name. Like, awesome. And then you start the cold call. But the point of doing that is you hold a lot more power by starting off by knowing their name in the first place. So it looks better researched anyways. But if you actually couldn't find their name, by you showing that you care about knowing their name, then later on you can kind of sprinkle it in and out of there when you're pitching and stuff like that. Therefore, it's going to be a lot more effective for you to cold call to them knowing who they are. So the list being important, there's another aspect to this as well. You really want to make sure that you vet the list for people who are unqualified. And when I say unqualified, for example, you don't want to just be reaching out to everybody. When you cold call someone and they don't pick up once, then you cold call them the next day, they don't pick up again, then you cold call them the third time, they don't pick up again, you might as well just scrap that number. If there's any way for you to vet numbers and kind of get them checked to make sure they are numbers that do actually work, I know there's a few softwares that do this, like enrichment of numbers and things like that. But make sure you do that because that way you don't waste your time cold calling nobodies. Like ghost cold calling was the thing that took up most of my time. I remember timing myself once on how many conversations I was actually having and then how many cold calls I was making. I think I cold called for 3 hours and I only had 20 minutes worth of conversation. I kid you not. On this specific day, the 150 people that I cold called, I think only 5 of them picked up. That's terrible. That's a really, really bad pickup rate. And that all came from the fact that when I got this list, I didn't check the numbers in the first place. Some of them were ghost numbers. Some of them were just numbers that were invalid, even though for some reason I kept cold calling them like an idiot. So really vet the numbers, really vet the list that you have because the lead list is the backbone of you cold calling. If you cold call the right people with the right information and the right context to call them, then the cold call itself is going to be a lot more effective and you can spend more time in conversations, more time understanding your niche, which is very, very important. And it's such a powerful thing about cold calling that I really like personally. So the second tip is that words are equal to tonality. Now, if you've watched Jordan Belfort before, you've probably heard him say tonality is the most important thing. Focus on tonality, focus on tonality. Well, in reality, that study that he talks about, where it's like, I don't know how many percentage of communication is actually in tonality, like 25% or something. That's actually when it comes to putting emotions across to people. And it's not just putting emotions across, it was actually how receptive those people were to understanding your emotional state. So that's just got to do with emotions. It doesn't actually got to do with people understanding you or people being convinced by you. So it's BS. Whenever someone says tonality is more important, it's not true, right? Because words are the thing that resonate with your market. If I go to a dentist and I was like, I'm going to help you get 10 clients, they're going to be like, what do you mean clients? I don't have clients, I have patients. So the word in that case was very, very important. The tonality might be able to support me, and if I said it with incredible tonality and incredible confidence, he might give me a shot, but if I had patients in there instead of clients, then it would resonate with him. His mind wouldn't have to think about it. Whereas even if I was confident, his mind had to think, well, clients, I don't have clients. Is this guy for me? Does this guy even know what my business is? So use the words that resonate with your market. Words are equal to tonality because the words are going to allow you to be able to put across value, not just the tonality itself. Of course, I'm not saying tonality is not important, and I'll be telling you what sort of tonality to bring into the call. But when you use specific words, you can put yourself across as an expert. I'm not saying use complicated words, but use the words that your niche uses. Example again with dentistry. For me, saying high ticket clients meant nothing. It meant nothing at all. So I would look at what is high ticket for them. Okay, Invisalign patients, maybe certain root canal treatments. Basically, you get what it is for them and you use those words rather than your own words. And therefore, when you're speaking to them, you sound like an expert. Oh, if I could help you get, 10 to 15 extra Invisalign patients, John, would that be useful at all? Like, it's just a lot more, you just sound a lot more like an expert, basically. That's literally the point I'm trying to hone into you. You trying to sound confident is one thing, and that's something you should 100% try and do. But if you're not using the right words, then you sound like someone who's incredibly confident, but you start sounding arrogant because you're not at the right place, right? Like, have you guys ever had someone who you know is confident, but the way they speak, you can just tell they're a bit stupid? I don't know how to explain this, but like, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they were sounding really, really confident, but they just weren't saying the right things, right? It was in a politics class that we were having, and this guy just kept talking absolute nonsense, basically, because he wasn't using the right words, he wasn't saying the right things. Even though he sounded confident, he just sounded arrogant at the end of the day, and you don't want to sound arrogant, okay? So on the tip on tonality, I guess you can make this tip 2.5, is speak slowly, but make sure that when you speak slowly, you are one, understood, this is another thing about language, but number two, that you try and finish on a downturn. I guess these are the two biggest tips I can give you. Speak slowly, because when you speak slowly, you sound naturally a lot more confident and you sound like you're supposed to be there. When you speak quickly, you're kind of rushing them off the phone, okay? This is something I noticed with prospects. I won't say his name, I always remember him. It's an Eastern European name. It's a lovely name as well. But I was basically calling him, and he's like, whoa, why are you speaking so quickly? And Eastern Europeans are very direct, obviously. He's like, why are you speaking so quickly? Do you want me to get off the phone? And I laughed to myself, and I was very, very nervous, as you could tell. And I was like, okay, my bad. Sorry. I'll try and speak a bit slower. And from then on, it was literally ingrained in my mind that I need to speak slower when it comes to cold calls. You might be thinking, well, Fedi, you speak incredibly fast on your videos, so I don't think you action this very well. You're right. Sometimes I don't action this super well when it comes to making the videos and speaking to people. That's because I'm just incredibly passionate about it. But when it comes to outreach, when it comes to cold calling, and it comes to sales calls, I'm always speaking slowly. And when it comes to speaking slowly as well, finish on a downturn, what that means is that your tonality should be going down. So you sound a bit more confident when you make a statement like this, rather than making a statement like this. Because when you end up on, I can't remember what it's called now, I did English language and I still can't remember this. But when you finish on an uptone, basically, it's in many cultures, especially in English, when you speak English, it's you asking a question. So instead of us putting a question mark at the end of sentences, you can just finish on an uptone, and then it sounds like you're asking a question. And when you do this on a cold call, it makes you sound like you're uncertain of yourself, which obviously you don't want, because you want to be sounding certain of yourself. You want to be sounding confident. So that's why you finish on a down tone, you finish on a down low, to make sure that they understand this is a statement, not a question. So I'll give you a quick example. You might say, hey John, it's Fedi Lecamus here. I know I'm calling out of the blue. Do you want to just give me 30 seconds to tell you why I'm calling? So it's a question, but because it finishes on a downturn, it makes me sound a lot more confident. Whereas if I said, hey John, it's Fedi Lecamus here. I know I'm calling out the blue, right? Do you mind giving me 30 seconds to tell you why I'm calling? I just don't sound confident. There's a big difference between finishing on a downturn and an uptone. Just bear that in mind, okay? Try and always finish your sentences on a downtone, especially your statements, not necessarily questions, that doesn't matter as much. But statements, like things you're trying to say that has a full stop at the end, try and say them with a downtone. So going further onto confidence, tip number 3 is to be confident, to sound confident. You actually have to be confident or try to be confident. And this is something I always get a question from my students when they're beginners. They're always like, well, Fedi, like, I've got no clients. What am I supposed to be confident on? I've got no proof of this. And I was like, okay, well, are you going to try your best to get them the best results possible? And they were like, yeah, well, I'm going to 100% try my best to get the best results possible for them. And I was like, well, then tether your confidence, make yourself confident, based not on your ability to provide value, but your ability to try your best to provide that value. Because at the start, you're going to sound nervous on cold calls, not only because cold calls are maybe a new thing to you, but you might be thinking in the back of your head, well, Fedi, how can I pitch this person if I don't actually know how to deliver the service that I'm offering them? And that's okay. First of all, as a little side note, you'll only get good at the service delivery not by watching 100 courses on Facebook ads, but by actually doing Facebook ads. And secondly, the really important thing for you to understand is that for you to sound confident, it doesn't have to be on the unsurmountable amount of proof that you have, although obviously, I personally think you should base your confidence on the hard work that you do. But what I'm saying is you have to first base it on the willingness for you to work hard, the willingness for you to provide as much as you can. Literally think of yourself as taking more than you can handle, so you can prove to them that you are wanting to do this, that you're capable of doing this. So a little tip as well. This is like I used to love doing this. As you can see, I'm stood up when I make these videos. I can't sit down to make a good video most of the time because I can't breathe as well. So when you're making cold calls, always stand up, shoulders back, head up, right, chin up slightly. And then when you hold the phone, don't hold it underneath you, hold it near you like this. If you're on your laptop, that's a bit different. But always try and be stood up, because not only do you sound more confident because you're able to breathe through your chest properly, but also you're just able to have a bit more energy when you're stood up. So stand up if you want to sound more confident as well. But generally, the tip I want to give you on this is, even if you have no results, tether your confidence, anchor your confidence in the fact that you will try your best to get them good results. There's nothing more to it, Echi. If you want to sound confident on a cold call, you don't use little tricks to sound more confident. You just be confident in yourself and in the fact that you will try your best. So tip number 4 is always ask for permission. So tip number 4 is always ask for permission. Now, what does this mean? Permission-based openers themselves, by the way, in terms of openers and how you should start the cold call, I believe they're the best, especially if they're well-researched. Remember what I mentioned in tip number 1? Especially when they're well-researched. You might say something like this. Hey, John, I know I'm calling you out of the blue. I honestly hate making cold calls as much as you probably hate receiving them. Do you mind just giving me 20 seconds to tell you why I'm calling? This is a pretty well-researched call. That's it. Like, you're asking permission. Rather than, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life, but one of my students sent it to me. He was like, Fedi, this was my cold call. And I was like, okay, let's see. I was listening to the dialogue between him and the prospect. He goes, hey, John, can you take on any more clients? Or he literally, most of the time, he didn't even know the name of the owner. So he'd be like, hey, is this the owner of XYZ company? Yeah, it is. Awesome. Well, we can get you 10 to 20 new appointments in the next 6 months for your business. It's like, whoa, hold on a bloody second. First of all, you have to ask permission for you to actually be able to cold call them. If they say, no, I don't have 30 seconds, or no, I don't want you to cold call me, then just scrap that. Just end the call. Be like, okay, well, awesome, John. Thank you for your time. Speak to you soon. That's it. But secondly, if you don't open permission, they're going to feel cramped. They're going to feel like they're being enclosed by someone, like they're being hunted, right? Like, how uncomfortable do you feel with me being this close to the screen and me being this close to the microphone? Probably very uncomfortable, right? And that's because when people get enclosed, they stop thinking about, oh, what am I going to do other than how am I going to get out? They start thinking about, how do I escape this? So when you give them no choice to move in, you're almost enclosing them and forcing them to try and find a way out. This is really, really important for you to understand, because you have to ask for permission. You have to ask for permission. That doesn't just come to opening the cold call, that comes to pitching the cold call. Because now when you pitch them, they've given you permission, so they have this bias towards continuing to give you permission in the first place. Like, for example, if someone asks you, Fedi, or someone just asks you, let's just say your name is Muhammad, right? If you're Muslim watching this, your name is probably Muhammad. They will probably like, okay, so Muhammad, do you mind if I share with you how I'm going to be able to change your life? If you go yes, you're suddenly listening a lot more because you've said yes to listening to the thing. If someone just said, Muhammad, I'm going to tell you the 3 ways I'm going to change your life, and you're like, okay, cool. Part of you's just going to be zoning out. So we have this bias to continue doing or to confirm what we did to someone else, especially if they've seen us or heard us say that we will confirm doing it. So this is really important as well, because when it comes to the opener, you have to make sure that you give them a yes or a no. That's simple. You have to ask simple questions, which is kind of 4.5 in terms of the tip. Ask simple questions to lead somewhere that you want them to go. Because if you don't ask permission for the pitch, for example, let's say you just go straight in and pitch, then it's not going to have much success, is it? So I'm literally going to walk you through my cold calling script right now. This is usually what I'd say. So the opener, you can guess I've been doing it, right? Hey, John, it's Fedi Lecamus here. I know I'm calling you out of the blue. I hate making cold calls as much as you hate receiving them, trust me. But do you mind giving me 30 seconds to tell you why I'm calling? It's a pretty well-researched call. Yeah, Fedi, go ahead. Awesome, John. So typically when I speak to dental practices, they mention 2 things. Number 1, they either have too many patients and not enough team members to handle them, or number 2, they have the team members, but they still got gaps in their calendar and they're looking for more private patients to fill them up. Do you mind telling me which one, John, do you resonate with? Is it number 1 or number 2? And then John will say number 2, then I know he's qualified. If he says number 1, then he's not qualified to work with me because he's fully booked. So why would I continue pitching him? Right, awesome. Well, John, this is me getting permission. Well, John, do you mind me sharing with you how we can help you get 10 to 15 new Invisalign patients every single month? Or is that something that's not top of priority for you? Yeah, go ahead, man, go ahead. Okay, awesome. Well, John, look, we handle the entire process from finding you the people, to book them in your calendar, to helping you get them to become a treatment, to treatment patient, basically. So we go through the entire process. We generate the lead for you. We qualify the lead. We nurture the lead until they come into your office, or they come into your practice, and they become a patient. Does that sound remotely interesting? Does that sound like it makes sense? Yeah, that makes sense. Like every step of the process, I'm basically asking them permission. And then finally, I'll be like, okay, well, awesome. John, look, it sounds like we might have something that could align with each other's goals. Do you mind if I put you into my calendar, maybe on Thursday at 10 a.m. for us to have a short conversation about this? Bam. Ask permission throughout the entire process. Just keep asking permission again and again and again and again. And I saw this video of this guy being like, you don't want to be weak on a cold call. You want to just be assertive. You want to tell them what they're going to do. You're going to tell them what they're going to do. And yeah, I mean, sure, sometimes it works. But you understand that what I'm telling you is a psychological principle. People will try and escape if you try and enclose around them. And people will not show up to your call if they feel pressured to have put the call in the first place. If you're going to pressure them, you want to manipulate them without pressuring them. You want to make them feel like they had a choice in the first place. You want to be smart about this, not brutish. So ask permission throughout the entire call. So now for tip number 5, this kind of comes into objection handling as well. You really want to ask easy questions for them to say yes or no to. So I alluded this kind of as point number 4.5. But when you ask easy questions, you give them a capacity to give you easy answers and then to potentially go deeper into them. So you might ask a question such as, are you able to take on more clients? It's a simple question. It's not, are you able to take on 5 clients for this week? It's just, are you able to take on more clients? Bam, you get a yes, you continue to the next stage. Does that make sense, John? Do you understand how we'd be able to help you? Yes, that does make sense. Perfect. So it all comes in with a simple question. And the point of the simple question is for them to lead themselves. So you lead them, but they're kind of leading themselves by answering your questions, to lead themselves into booking a meeting with you. Because at the end of the day, they've said this: yes, I can take more patients. Yes, I understand how you can help me get more patients. Yes, I want to book a meeting with you. What choice do they have but to book a meeting with you? They want to book a meeting with you at this point because they've confirmed to you that they need to book a meeting. However, if you just come into them and just start spouting nonsense and not asking any questions and just speaking at them, then they have no confirmation of why they should book a meeting. Just you've told them to book a meeting. But you want them to make them feel like themselves, like they have decided to book a meeting with you. And that's going to be a lot more powerful to increase your show-up rate as well, by the way, just as a little tip. So when it comes to asking easy questions, the way I'd always handle objections on a cold call is, first of all, I try and understand if this was a smokescreen objection, meaning, for example, before you pitch them, like just you say, hey, John, it's Fedi Lecamus, and he just cuts you off. He goes, yeah, I'm not interested. That's a smokescreen objection. What's he not interested in? He's not interested in probably having a cold call or talking to me, but he doesn't know what I'm offering. So it's just a knee-jerk objection, right? It's a smoke screen potentially for something else, but it's just a knee-jerk objection. There's no thought behind it. He did it automatically because he's received loads of other cold calls and he doesn't want to have the cold calls anymore. So he does this instantly to get rid of them. And by the way, most people fall for this. Most people do hang up, but I wouldn't hang up. I would always laugh and ask a simple question. So I'd always say, ha 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 ha. I wouldn't actually laugh like that, obviously, right? Haha, John, completely understandable. Again, I wouldn't laugh like that. I'm just trying to make the point. John, completely understandable. Look, if you were interested in what I was going to offer you, I mean, I imagine you would have cold called me, right? Maybe you hate cold calls as much as I do, but that would have been the case. Well, look, John, I'm just curious if you had 30 seconds for me to tell you in the first place why I had called you. Is that okay? Yes or no? Simple question. And what you could also do to handle that is like, awesome, John, I mean, I assume when you say you're not interested, you might not know exactly why I'm calling, but are you able to take on any more clients right now? Yes or no? Yes or no, you're able to take on more clients. The solution oftentimes is just going to be having a call with you. I remember getting this objection about price, like straight off the back on cold call for some reason. The person was like, yeah, we just don't have the money. I'm like, absolutely. You know, it's very hard right now to hold a team, let alone to try and hire someone new and then have the money aside to do marketing. I completely understand why you wouldn't have the money. But would it make sense for you to look at a solution so you get more patients? Yes, it would. Amazing. Well, look, John, I'm more than happy to put aside 15 minutes in my calendar just to have a talk about this with you to see if anything aligns and if there's anything I can do to help you. Would that be okay? And then bam. So always, you handle the objection by agreeing with them. You then put it to the side by asking an easy question. And then you basically kind of lead to the meeting being the solution. You don't try and say, we're going to work together now, that's the solution. You lead the meeting. The meeting is going to be the solution to that problem. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, feel free, by the way, to leave a comment. I'm more than happy to answer you guys as much as I can. So tip number 6 is probably the most important thing. Just keep dialing. Just keep dialing. You do understand that this is a numbers game. You, statistically, are shit at cold calling because you've never cold called before. And that's okay. I was only good at cold calling until I did 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 cold calls. And again, I wasn't good at cold calling. I was just better than I was at the beginning. And therefore, my way of cold calling improved. And therefore, my meetings, the amount of bookings I had, improved as well. At the start, it wasn't about the script. It wasn't about how I cold called. It wasn't about the objection handling. It was just about me. I was being worked on the cold calls. I wasn't doing cold calls. The cold calls were doing me at the start. And this is something you have to really try and understand, Akhi, is dial as much as you can. At the start, it's just for you to build the skill to become a better cold caller. We're set these expectations by people to be able to book 100 meetings a month with cold calls or whatever they would be, right? Like we get set these abnormal expectations of like, oh, with cold calling, I booked my meeting like 10 calls. I'm like, oh, sick, I'll start cold calling this guy. Booked a meeting like his first 10 calls. I'm going to do it. But, I'm telling you now, it took me 1,000 cold calls to just book one meeting at the start. One meeting, 1,000 cold calls. The group I was in, everyone was doing better than me in cold calls. Everyone. And it wasn't until I realized that, okay, in those 1,000 cold calls, what I was doing is actually honing in my skill. I was improving my script. I was improving myself in a lot of ways as well. It became less about the cold calls getting results than the cold calls working on me. But you have to just keep dialing. Just because you did 1,000 cold calls and you booked 0 meetings doesn't mean cold calls don't work. It means you're not working. It means you're the problem. Instead of looking for a solution elsewhere, look at yourself and try and fix yourself. Try and fix your tonality. Try and fix the way you talk. Try and fix your beliefs around cold calling. Poor people have poor people beliefs. Rich people have rich people beliefs. And right now you probably have a poor people belief. You believe that you have to get results instantly. You believe that the skills that you're building aren't necessarily worth it unless they get you results instantly. You have to stop pursuing that mindset. Look at cold calling as a way for you to practice not only the way you communicate with people, but your skill overall in sales. Because cold calling is just a numbers game. The more no's you get, the closer you are to a yes. Statistically, you are probably going to have someone book a meeting with you in probably 200, 300 cold calls 100% of the time. At least one person is going to book a meeting with you. And that's luck. That's not because of your skill. That's luck. And that's okay. Biqadr Allah, right? Everything happens, everything is written by Allah Azza wa Jal. So the way you want to look at it, akhi, is just keep calling so you can reduce that luck, increase your skill, and improve your capacity to do cold calls and do better cold calls. Before you do better cold calls, you just have to do more cold calls. I just told you, from the calls that I tracked, I've done over 15,000. I've done over 15,000 in my entire life of cold calling, but I haven't tracked them, so I don't want to tell them to you because I don't know exactly how much they are. 15,000 cold calls. After 15,000 cold calls, was my agency doing very well? Before that, it wasn't. Before that, my cold calling was terrible. Before that, I didn't understand the things I'm sharing with you now. So inshallah, by the end of the video, once you've finished everything, understand this. It's just about you calling. Just keep calling. Just keep cold calling. If you're watching this video, I know you want to improve your cold calling skills. But I want you to succeed. I don't just want you to watch a video, make me feel good, subscribe to me and whatever. I want you to succeed, akhi. Understand this. Keep calling. Just keep calling. Your success is in the fact that you can keep calling again and again and again and again and again. So hopefully that makes sense. And this leads to the final point, tip number 7, which is stop being emotional. What does not being emotional mean? Not being emotional literally just means one thing. Stop making decisions based on emotions and start making decisions based on data. Emotions are going to hold you back because emotions are going to try and get you to go loads of different directions. One time you're going to feel motivated, you're going to feel confident, and when you're cold calling, bam, you're going to do really, really well. But other days you're going to feel a bit down, you're not going to want to cold call in the first place, and therefore your cold calls will take the hit. Well, guess what? You don't make decisions based on what it is that you feel, decisions based on data. Look at when you've done best on cold calling. Of course, it's going to be about your tonality and how you feel on that day and if you feel confident. But the script that you used and every other thing that you said, you only look at that. You look at that as the data point. You look at that as the most important thing to continue. So you can basically collect more data. Unless you pitch loads of people, but none of them book the meeting, you end up realizing, okay, cool, there's something wrong with my pitch. You don't make that emotional decision because you booked 0 meetings. You cold call 1,000 times. You realize nobody booked a meeting with you. You look at your data and you're like, okay, cool. I can see from here that I pitched 10 people, but none of them, ended up booking a meeting with me. Just as a random example. So the data you want to be tracking in the first place to make sure you can make the right decisions are this. Number 1, how many dials you end up making. Generally, just how many cold calls you end up making. 2, the pickup. So how many people pick up the phone? Not necessarily decision makers, because it could be the gatekeeper, it could be the receptionist, whatever it would be. So number 2 would be the pickup. Number 3 would be decision maker conversations. How many people have you actually had a conversation with that were the decision maker? And then lastly, well, just before the booking meeting, lastly, resonation rate. How many people have you pitched right? How many people, like, did you say, does this problem relate to you? And then go, yes, this problem relates to me. How many people was that? Next, you look at the amount of meetings you booked. So these 5 data points are going to give you every single decision that you can make. And the decisions you'll be making will not be based on your emotions. For example, you book 0 meetings, you're feeling emotional, like, I'm going to change my script completely. Well, guess what? Maybe the script you were doing was really good at getting past the gatekeeper. It was really good at doing a bunch of other stuff, but it wasn't very good at pitching them correctly so you can book a meeting. Or maybe you didn't handle the objections very well. Well, now you've changed everything. You have to restart everything again, which is the most frustrating part. Just stop being emotional. Make your decisions based on data and collect the right data in the first place. And the way for you to do this, I generally want you to understand, the best way for you to do this is to understand this. Your decisions should only be made by the amount of number of cold calls that you've made and the amount of data that you've collected. If you've collected 0 data or you've tracked 0 data, you make 0 new decisions. You don't trust your hunch. You don't trust what someone else says. You only look at the data. Someone can only understand how to help you in the context in which to help you if they look at your data and they can give you tips that way. That's the last point I really want to make, Akhi. The thing I really, really wish I did earlier was track my cold calls and track my data so I can make better decisions. Because I changed my script at least 20 times. I bought like 6 courses on cold calling that I just did not need to buy. If I just looked at the data, I would have been able to make better informed decisions instead of these emotional decisions buying to try and solve a problem that I don't even know how to fix. Maybe the solution is a new script, but maybe it's not. And you only know how to do that when you have data. Collect data, make decisions based on data, not emotions, and just keep dialing. Bidnillah, just keep dialing again and again and again and again. That's all you need to do, Habibi. If you want to make loads of money, you just keep putting in the work that's going to make you the money in the first place. So I hope this makes sense. To reiterate all the points, point number 1 is the list matters. Point number 2 is that words are equal to the tonality. You want to make sure you're using the right words. Point number 3, sound confident by being confident and anchoring your confidence on the fact that you will try your best to deliver the service for them. Number 4 is always ask permission. Number 5 is ask easy questions. Number 6 is keep dialing. And number 7 is no emotional decisions, only decisions based on data. By the way, do you know what? I'll give you tip number 8 because I think this could be really useful for you. The last final tip I could give, and the one that I kind of reflect on and wish I knew sooner as well, was the fact that the objections that you handle are insights on the market. They're insights into what your customer thinks. So take the objections seriously, write them down, understand how to overcome them, but most importantly, understand why they come up with those objections. Because the more cold calls you make, the better you understand your niche. The better you understand your niche, the better cold calls you can make, the better your advertising, the better your sales calls and everything. So take cold calls seriously, not just in a form of selling, but in a form of research, and try and truly understand what your niche wants. That's literally just the final thing for tip number 8, is keep that in mind. So, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If you want to be making 10k per month, being more disciplined, obviously if you're a Muslim business owner, then feel free to join the free school community, which can show you everything. Like the brothers in there, mashallah alayhum, are doing amazing. Anyways, just connect with like-minded Muslim entrepreneurs, know and understand how you can be making 10k per month and stuff I can't really share on YouTube. And inshallah, I get to speak to you soon there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.